right.
Right.
How are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm not bad. I'm here.
So we just checked out Brainscan.
Yes, we did.
It's like a 90s... I mean, it kind of was a horror film.
So
they say,
I want to
but-
hear you describe this movie. What did you think this movie was? Was it a horror movie?
Well, originally I thought it was a horror film. But after seeing it, I was like, no, it's more of psychological, just mind F in a way. You know?
Supernatural too, you know?
Yeah. But you picked this one out, so why is it special? Like, why is this one? What made you choose this one?
Okay, so, all right, we'll come back to, like, what type of movie it is.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, no, this movie is special to me for a multitude of reasons. This came out in 94, and I went and saw it in the theater. And this is an era, I think I was 13, I was 12 or 13, I was 13 years old. And I remember this was at a time in my life when I would go to the movies a lot, but I didn't have anyone really to go with, so I would ask my mom to like drop me off at the theater and buy my tickets for my movies.
Sure.
So she would, she didn't really mind what I saw, She was like, whatever, She dropped me at the movies one day at a theater that no longer exists. It was a United Artists on the corner of Palo Verde and South in Lakewood, and that movie theater no longer exists. I think it's a department store now.
Fun.
But you're right. And I went and saw this movie, and the character, so relatable. Edward Furlong's character, not necessarily relatable. Here's what it is. It's this, you're 13 years old. I see this kid.
Oh, okay.
I see this kid who's got no parental supervision, He's got tons of toys, all these digital things. He's got this thing you can call Igor to call whoever he wants, and, all these cool games. And, he's got a really fun best friend and a really pretty girl that lives next door.
Sure.
It's kind of this dream life,
Mm-hmm.
and, for a kid, So you get to kind of, for an hour and a half, just kind of get involved in this kind of, every kid wants to be this kid for a little bit,
Sure.
Except what you don't realize is when you get 20 minutes into the movie, this kid gets thrown into this dark, series of events,
But they kind of hinted at the opener.
Sure.
Of the movie.
He's the president of the horror club.
Yeah.
And they watch horror films, every week or whatever. But,
sure.
So they show, and he's a horror fanatic. They show him reading Fangoria and stuff like that, and
all over his room. The
posters all over his room and all that stuff. And
I liked his phone thing.
Yeah, Igor.
Yeah, Igor.
Yeah, it was Igor.
Man, if they had those things nowadays,
that's what I'm talking
sick.
about. See, when I saw that in the theater as a kid, and I will say, the music, too. Me being a musician now, I didn't realize how much impact the music had on me watching these films when I was young. But the music in that was perfect. It wasn't overdone. It wasn't pretentious. And
there was something about it that was so unique.
And
it just...
Totally.
I haven't really heard, to kind of piggyback on that, I haven't heard any kind of score that's... You know what I mean? Almost like that, or
here's the thing. That was a movie that I feel had an extreme ambiance score, whereas this movie was made in 1994. So you got to realize that before that, most movies that you were going to see in theaters had more of a traditional score.
Sure.
Most films, not all, but most films had more of a traditional score. Save for the John Carpenter horror films, because John Carpenter did the music for his own films, that iconic dun 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 dun. Yeah, totally. Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York,
The Thing.
He did the music for all of these, they had very different. But other than that, you were getting these orchestral traditional scores.
Thanks to John Williams, which is not a bad thing.
Sure, everybody wanted to do something similar, right? Yeah. And then you get this score. It's got a lot of, like I said, ambiance, and it wasn't really overly. You didn't have a bunch of orchestra in this. It was just kind of almost like sound effects.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Almost
I do.
Did you ever play the game BioShock?
I love that game.
So the score on that game is very ambient.
So good.
Do you know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
So it's similar to that. It had this feel, it had this vibe, And as a kid, at 13 years old, I didn't realize how much that impacted me. I realizing I was going to be a musician, realized I was going to be a composer. But there were so many aspects of this movie that I absolutely loved, and why it became special to me. And one of the major things was there was this character in the film named Trickster.
Oh.
And when he came on screen, it was very special because he's a one-of-a-kind character. He's got very appropriate lines.
Yeah.
He was played by a guy who played him very appropriately. It was played to a T.
Before I saw it when I was young, he's scary.
Right, and that's the thing. He was on the
Didn't
cover.
wanna see it, yeah.
So you see this character, this really
Creepy as hell.
really
At
creepy
the time,
character.
At the time. Yeah.
This extremely creepy character on the cover, but when you see him in the movie, he's fun. Mm-hmm. He's actually a fun character that's not something that would scare you.
No, and that's the thing. Like me watching it when I was 13, because I don't, you know me, I don't really hold to horror or those type of movies too often. So it's kind of like, this one? I don't know.
Right.
But then when I watched it, I was like, oh wait, I kind of want more of this character.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I'll say that was one of the reasons it became special to me. But overall, there's kind of this overarching thing that of why this movie particularly was the first one I chose in this series that we're doing, and it's because this movie, along with another that I saw the same day.
oh, you did a double feature.
I did
That's
a double
sick.
feature that same day, and this one was the first one, and the next one I saw was Maverick with Mel Gibson and Jodie Foster and James
so
Garner.
good.
Great movie, right? So saw those two movies in the same day, and just the experience of watching these two amazing films, I thought to
Right.
myself, I want to do this. I want to make movies.
Okay.
This is what I want to do.
So
with
that
you know.
that's interesting. Springboarding in that.
That
Right
was
on, right
that
on.
was why I chose Brainscan, is because that was part of half of the reason I wanted to make movies. Was watching Brainscan, and I thought to myself, how cool would it be to act in movies? How cool would it
Yeah.
be to be the hero? How cool would it be to write the music for these things? You know, or I didn't think much about directing and producing and stuff back then, but when we started making film and I got to see Dan Ringy direct the very first thing I wrote, and I was just like, man, I could do that. I want to do that.
Yeah,
you know,
right, I hear
and
you.
I wanted to direct. But
I didn't really. I know exactly what you're saying. I can't recall exactly what movie it was for me, because my family used to watch like all the kind of black and white classicals to whatever
Interesting.
came out, and like my mom, she was like, no,
Yeah, that was
movie
never a
weekend,
thing for
movie
me.
Weekend. Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The classics for me are movies like Die Hard and
yeah, right.
Predator and
Mine are
Lethal
like-
Weapon,
yeah.
Back to the Future.
It's
League
a
of Their
Wonderful
Own.
Life, Philadelphia Story, Gone with the Wind.
That
Like, what
I haven't seen any of them.
Oh, right on.
So maybe we should do a series on the classics.
Oh, yes.
Because I haven't seen a lot of them.
So
you
good.
know.
There's some of them that coin iconic phrases or characters or movies, even cartoons. Which is
Oh,
great.
really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I won't get into it because
We'll watch them. We'll have to check it out. So yeah, so let's go back to what Brainscan is, the type of movie Brainscan is.
Yeah.
Definitely would consider it a horror film because of its nature in the fact that
There's
it
some
deals.
gory elements and scary for kids or whatever.
Right.
It's rated R.
So essentially, the
thing.
movie is about this kid who is 15, 16.
Yeah.
He gets he buys this video game, and it comes in the mail, and he puts it on, and it kind of hypnotizes him.
Yeah, it's
And-
like quoted to be like the scariest, goriest game
Right,
ever.
exactly,
Whatever. He's
exactly.
like, bullshit, let's try it.
Right, exactly. So he tries the game, it hypnotizes him, and in the game, there's a voice telling him to do certain things and to go certain places, and he goes into this guy's house, and without giving up too much, actually, with giving up everything, actually, he kills this guy, right? And he like wakes up from the video game, and he sees that he's got time to spare for the mission that he was on, and he's like, oh man, that was intense, and then he realizes shortly thereafter that like that may have really happened.
That's right.
And so he kind
Twisted,
of
yeah.
starts going off into this thing, and he has to end up playing future installments of this game to get rid of the witnesses and cover up evidence and do other things. And the real only gory part, really only murderous part, really is the part where he kills the guy.
Right.
Where he does that murder. That's the really horror part. And then the trickster character seems kind of.
Yeah, he does little funky things, but
But
it's
at the
not,
same, yes. So it's not
it's not like
necessarily
Freddy Krueger or any.
nowhere
Jason
near
or-
Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street.
No.
It's way more toned down. I would say
Nothing compared to today's.
it's almost like a
movies either.
Goosebumps version of like a
Yeah.
horror film.
So that's why I concede. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's a horror movie, but it's not like an intense horror movie. Like.
All right, so having just watched it, let me get your take on some of your favorite moment or moments, if you had any. I'm not,
Yeah.
you might not have had any.
Actually, I will say the opener for reasons of if a movie can kind of like make you question like wait a minute, what's happening? Why is this happening? You know? Whereas, like, I've seen some movies, they're literally filming crabgrass over
At the
music.
beginning, right? Yeah.
And I was like, I have things to do.
Right. Yeah.
You know? Whereas this one, it's like, you see, you know, Edward Furlong's character, he's like sweating and
They're
he's
instant.
pacing,
Yes.
and there's something happening, and like, what happened?
They're instantly developing character.
Yeah, right.
Instantly developing character from shot number one.
And the other thing that I liked is it kept a consistent thread through the film.
Yeah, absolutely. They took that back. Like, they took that flashback.
Yeah, it's almost like the MacGuffin, I think.
Right, totally.
That's a film term, kids. Look it up. But that's, I guess, it's not really what is a moment. I liked that because then it made me stop and go, okay, so this means something. What? Okay, where's it gonna tie in?
Where is this taking me?
You know?
Dude, absolutely.
The other moments that actually, there's a couple. Trickster was not in it enough. All of his moments are great. You know, now that I watched it again, and I'm just like, dude, this character is just so, like, intense and unique. And, you know, I loved when he puts on Primus and just starts dancing around to Primus.
Pretty much all of the Trickster scenes were highlights for you.
Absolutely.
Were highlight moments for you. That's awesome, dude. For me, I will say there was one particular moment that I really enjoyed, and that was the moment at the very end. The very last shot where he goes in, because at the beginning, he's in the horror club, and the principal comes in and takes him to his office and chastises him for making the people in the horror club watch a movie called Death, 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 Part 2. You know? And he says, I'm not going to let the horror club go on any longer unless I okay the next movie or video game that you are going to show the club.
Hilarious.
So at the very end of the movie, after all of the things are said and done, he comes back to school and he knocks on the principal's office door and he says, hey, I got a new video game I'm going to show the horror club. You know, go ahead and check it out. And he looks at it and he says, Brainscan. And he goes, this should be interesting. You know, and Edward Furlong's character says, yeah. He goes, I really think you'll like it. And in the background, Trickster kind of appears sitting in the principal's chair and claps like, well played. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And at 13 years old, I was, even now, even watching it right now, like that moment at the end was like perfect.
So Brainscan 2, all we see is the teacher dying of a heart attack playing the game.
Right, exactly.
The movie's over in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. No, that was great. That was my favorite moment in the film. The very last scene was definitely my favorite moment in the film. Okay, so you having just watched it for the first time, I told you why I think it works as a film with why it's special to me. Why do you think it works as a film? Do you think I mean, obviously you do. You liked it, you know, definitely. Yeah. By the way, I changed my genre from horror to teen thriller. It's a teen thriller, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's my best label I can come up with for the genre for this film.
Sure.
Anyway, why did this movie work as a movie? Why did this work as a movie?
I think first off, it just hit on every beat of a young teen. And the idea, in general, of just like this new technology taking you on such a wild ride. And it's like, fast forward to today, I mean, we have that in VR headsets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, if somebody tried to make that game now, they pretty much do.
Right.
So back then, it was like a novel concept. It's like, whoa, this is crazy. You know, I've never thought of anything like this.
Interesting. So do you think it worked better as a film in '94 than it would today if somebody were to come out with that today? Do you think it, my question is, do you think it would play, do you think it would hold less weight today in today's commercial, you know, cinema?
Like if you're saying it came out as is?
As is.
Yes, it would hold less weight. Now, if they tried...
Well, obviously, if like it was, like if it was shot pretty much scene for scene, but with the stuff.
Yes, still.
With the cameras.
Yes, still. Here's why. Because of... They would have to... I mean, unless they subverted the certain technologies, because, you know, you got the TikTok and...
Obviously,
I
think you're obvious. I think
we're saying the same.
Yeah,
I
think thing. Well, I mean, that was why, because you already explained why.
Yeah.
You explained So I was just wondering if you thought it would be less effective now, in today's cinematic
Then
realm.
maybe
I
no.
think you're right. Actually, I think you might be right. I think
It might
that
be a 50-50 split because you could potentially, if you write it correctly, it would be scarier because of the technology, and not to mention the things you could do with the character of Trickster. You could go even deeper in the backstory of Furlong's character or whoever they would cast at that point in time.
how his mom died in the car accident and all that stuff. Yeah.
Because what you could do is, even in VR, is like...
What you're saying right now, I'll be honest with you, what you're saying right now just reiterates how good of a movie that was and how how concise they were to get it right. To put in all of the aspects of the backstory with the mom and his knee and his limp and the best friend and the connection between those two, and then the game itself.
Yeah, because the crazy thing, another kind of, to go backwards, is, I forgot about this moment, is in the game it hits on your subconscious, so everything your body chemistry does, like one of the things he has to go do is cover up certain foot tracks that a certain person, how he walks, would
limps, yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's genius. So that's part of why it is necessary.
Totally, dude.
You gotta get it.
And and you know what? Good movies move the story forward.
Yes.
This movie does that, like you said, from the first scene. And I will say, I'm a huge fan of Frank Langella.
Oh.
And he played the cop in this, and
he's super good.
Yeah.
He wasn't in it a lot, but
in general,
concise.
he's absolutely.
He doesn't need to be in a lot to be good.
Nah, absolutely not. So I will say that's another one of the reasons I really enjoyed this as well. Frank Langella, Trickster, the character of Trickster was awesome. Edward Furlong, always, I'm kind of just a fan of his in general, so I kind of watch his movies in general.
Yeah.
That's kind of what drew me into watching Brainscan in the first place.
Well, and I think he came off of the popularity of Terminator 2.
Totally.
I was
first,
right?
12 when I saw that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that, I was like, oh, this kid's the shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
And then, just, take that into great story, fantastic, cinematography and execution with wardrobe and makeup and all the stuff they did with Trickster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they made that movie right. The story, the sequencing, everything. So, in my opinion, I think it's a killer movie. I'm really glad to have shown it to you.
Appreciate it,
We also want to know what the audience thinks.
Definitely.
So, out there, if you guys are watching, if you guys seen Brainscan, let us know what you think. All right, cool, man. Take care. See you on the next one.